We're just under halfway through the season, and we are currently tied for the fewest wins in all of the NBA. And so it's time to take our first look at the upcoming draft, and we'll be taking a look at some of the top prospects on the board today. I just want to say this draft class is going to be very good. I still think maybe Saramago would be the best player in this class, but after that, I think the top three players in this class would be second, third, and fourth. But even more importantly with this draft, I think the depth is much, much better. We won't be going too much into the depth here in this episode, as with my first look at a draft class, I prefer to focus on the top prospects. And the number one prospect in this class is Jamal Morris Sr. Jamal is a 6'9", 243-pound wing out of Kentucky. His ceiling comp is Dwayne Wade, Hall of Fame, and you can see it in his game. He used his strength regularly to just overpower people in driving situations. I mean, he would just get inside seemingly whenever he wanted and have the ability to consistently finish over the top of them. Very smart with his shot selection, knew when he had a mismatch on a player, took advantage of it. Good on the handle, good defensively. If you had to poke one hole, he's not an elite three-point shooter yet. He'll certainly take them, but doesn't hit them quite at the clip that you would want at this point. But a superb athlete at 6'9", likely to play the 2 or the 3, and just somebody who can score almost seemingly at will. My comparison, personally, from what I've seen from Jamal Morris, would be somebody like a DeMar DeRozan. He shoots a little bit more threes than DeMar shoots, but I think he excels from the mid-range and in, but is very good in that area. 19 years old. I still technically don't have these guys at 100%, so I don't know their badges quite yet. I'll know them in just one more scouting period, which will obviously help maybe differentiate who's first, second, and third in this class. But as long as he doesn't have like no badges, Jamal Morris Sr., I think, is a surefire number one selection in this class. Taking a look at his grades here: inside, mid, perimeter defense, playmaking, IQ, all in the B areas. His only A right now is his physicals, but A+ potential. Again, we'll have to see where those badges come in, but nothing below C-, a fairly well-rounded player. And his three-pointer, it's not like it'll never develop, it's just not quite there yet. I think Jamal Morris Sr. is a guy who has the potential to be a number one option on a high-level team. He is somebody that I was very impressed with in the times I was able to watch him play at Kentucky. Next up on our list of players to talk about is Dante Hardy, a power forward out of Virginia, can also play center. In fact, played a lot of center at Virginia this year. And if I had to do like a one-sentence scouting report on Hardy, it would be a poor man's Saramago. They're both 6'10" plus. Saramago's a little bit bigger, but very similar skill sets at the power forward position. I just think Hardy's not quite as dominant of an athlete, which is why I think Saramago is better, and I call him the poor man's version. But he can score at all three levels, has a good handle for a man of his size, 6'10", 218. So again, he's a bit smaller and not quite as strong as Ayrton Saramago, but he's still a guy who has a potential to be a high impact two-way player, has some really solid rebounding that you're gonna like starting off with him. And then his defense is a little bit more of a work in progress. He's a little bit more of a skinnier build and needs to learn how to be more consistent on the interior, but certainly athletic enough to be a high-level defender at some point in his career, much like Saramago, a little bit more developed on the offensive side at this point in time. Taking a look here at his grades, he has A- inside, B- mid-range, and B+ 3 points. Can score at all 3 levels. Again, that defense isn't superb yet, but it's not bad to start by any means. C playmaking for power forward is certainly good enough. B+ for power forward is really good. Smart player with the BIQ, A- physicals. Only B+ potential here, so certainly a drop off from Jamal Morris Sr. I think if we didn't have Ayrton Saramago, I'd be very, very interested in Dante Hardy. And there's even a chance they could play together. Dante Hardy, I think looking at the skill set, could potentially play the 3, or we could have him play the 4 and Saramago play the 5. I think they could work together, but out of the top 3 in this class, I think this is probably the most awkward fit out of all of them. But let's go into the player that I think would be the best fit if we had the chance to draft him, and that is point guard Albert Ellis. Standing at 6'2", a little bit small for what you're looking for in today's day and age, but Albert Ellis is just an extremely skilled point guard out of the University of Arkansas. Going to be 19 in his first season. He has as good of a handle as you are going to see a player ever have coming out of the draft. Unfortunately, with that 6'2" frame, he does have 200 pounds. That gives him a solid build, but his wingspan is not going to help his case at all. I think his shorter wingspan helps him have an insanely high, ability to handle the ball, but it's going to limit him defensively. But technique-wise, effort-wise, defensively, he's there. It's just a 6'2" point guard with a small wingspan is, how good are they ever going to be defensively? He is surprisingly good attacking the rim for his size. He has an advanced finishing move arsenal at his disposal. He can get his shot off the dribble or off the catch. As a point guard, I wish he was a little bit more of a passer. He's certainly a score first minded guard. I would compare him to Kyrie Irving. His comparison on his draft card for ceiling is All-NBA Tony Parker with a Darren Williams starter floor. He'd be our best point guard next season for sure. He's a very good starting level prospect, especially offensively. And again, defensively, I think it's more his size that limits him than anything else. But let's go ahead and take a look at his grades here. A's across the board for his scoring. This guy is going to be able to score from day one, and even A- perimeter defense. In the times that I watched him, I didn't really see that pop as much. Again, that has to be due to his size. His playmaking is an A. I think that's a lot to do with his handle, which, like I said, is super elite. Super smart player as well. The physicals are there. I will say he doesn't have an elite kind of burst or anything. It wasn't so much his athleticism that was getting him by people on the drive. It is more of his kind of strength and his handle that would get him there. B+ potential, but I really like Albert Ellis. I think he'd be a great fit at point guard for us. I think a lot of the things that we like about Lonzo Ball and what he's been able to do at point guard, I think he can just do even better as long as you're okay with a 6'2" point guard. I think that limits you defensively in some ways. And while he's a very impressive finisher in college, finishing in the NBA is a different animal. I think it'll translate because his layup package is quite advanced, but it just might not. Being a shorter point guard is tough. It's kind of the Scoot Henderson debate that we had recently in real life. You take the guy who is an elite driver, but he's 6'2". It's a risk. I'd say he's risky, but if he hits, I think he's a perfect fit next to the 2 core players that we drafted last season. I think these 3 are easily the best 3 players in this class, and all have a combination of good day one impact with high ceilings. Forgot to look at Dante Hardy's ceiling when I was talking about him. He also has the Tim Duncan Hall of Fame ceiling on him, which is exactly what we had from Ayrton Saramago. So I think in a vacuum, you could convince yourself that Dante Hardy is the second best player in this class. I think for us though, I'd rank him third because we just drafted Saramago. And I honestly am close to ranking Albert Ellis first, even though his ceiling is only All-NBA compared to Hall of Fame. Jamal Morris Sr. is very, very good, and I'd be happy to draft him. I'd probably still have him number 1 on my board, slightly over Ellis, but this is very close. Dante Hardy is an easy third. I want to talk about one more player in this class. I said there's a lot of depth, and once we get to the offseason, I'll be previewing a lot more of these players. But there's one more player I think we need to talk about in today's episode just because he's so unique, and that is Esteban Gonzalez, out of Spain, but played some basketball at the University of Texas. And the reason I wanted to talk about him is he's a 7'5", 250-pound center. 7'5". In a conference where we're gonna have to face off against Victor Wembanyama, I think this is a very intriguing prospect. Now, he's not quite as day one ready as anybody else that we've previewed here. He's more of the take a guy who's 7'5" and showed flashes of being able to do some stuff in the post like this and see what you can do with him. He doesn't have any skills right now other than potential above a B-. But this is the all upside player in this class that could end up being, I think, maybe the best player in this class. I think that's tough because there are some really good players in it, but he could be a truly dominant center at some point in his career, but it is a risk. Taking a look here at his grades, again, it's a lot of C's right now. Can hit some in the mid-range, not really a three-point shooter, unfortunately. If he was had the capability of being a 7'5" stretch big, that'd be even more intriguing. Not much of a perimeter defender. I will say, contrary to another 7'5" guy like Victor Wembanyama, he's not fast at all or quick, which kind of goes into his perimeter defense. The one disappointing thing about him is you'd expect somebody like him to be better rebounding. Only C+ to start, but he does have that A+ potential. Hall of Fame Bill Walton. So if we don't end up with one of the top picks in this class, I think Gonzalez is ranked right now kind of as a top 5 player. If we go to where he's being projected in the class though, more kind of 5, 6 or something, which we could end up in the draft if we don't get any lottery luck, or if we have a good second half of the season. With an 8'1" wingspan, I'd be interested in Gonzalez just taking a project in that spot, somebody who can start up as a backup center and potentially could take over for Jalen Duren for us in the future. But whoever ends up drafting him, we're gonna have another very high upside 7'5" center in the league, and it's going to be a pain to deal with. Those are the 4 players that I wanted to preview here in our first look at the draft, but there are other guys I like in this class. Holland we'll talk about later. Mays we'll talk about later. Wells we'll talk about later. We'll talk about a lot of other players that I think have the potential to be, at the very least, high impact starters in the NBA down the road. Let me know what you guys think of these top 3, how you would rank them personally on the Vancouver Blizzard big board. And let's get into the rest of this episode. Breaking news out of Phoenix, Arizona. As the trade deadline approaches, the 12-25 Phoenix Suns, currently the 4th worst record in basketball, have decided to press the reset button and have traded both Devin Booker and Kevin Durant in a trade that is going to ultimately be a 3-team deal. Let's break it down right now. The 3 teams involved in the trade will be, of course, the Phoenix Suns, the Houston Rockets will be one team, and the Orlando Magic the other. Let's quickly break down the Orlando side of this, as it is the most simple. Orlando had the right to swap between their own pick and Phoenix's pick in this upcoming 2026 NBA draft. And they got word that Phoenix was not going to move off of Devin Booker and Kevin Durant this season unless they got their own picks back. Houston has the Washington Wizards first round pick, who are currently a half game behind Phoenix, but with a much worse differential, and thus we're willing to swap with Houston and bet against the Wizards rather than the Suns for the remainder of the season. And that is that portion. Houston, now owning the rights to Phoenix's 2026 and 2027 first round draft picks, decided to go all in and acquire both Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Not only will Phoenix be receiving their own future back with 2026 and 2027 first, they already have their 2028. They will be getting a young star to build around in Jalen Green, just signed a contract, only 23 years old compared to 37 and 29. And this allows them to build through the draft, as well as a young star in Jalen Green. They won't only be getting their own first back though, they will also be getting a 2026 Brooklyn first round pick, which has the potential to be good. They are currently at 500 though, so it could be a play-in caliber team. And then a 2029 Houston first, which was the only other first they had left to trade. Phoenix will take on the salaries of John Collins and Dylan Brooks to match, and that is the trade. Took me a while to concoct this trade. Let me know what you think of it now. Houston now has an absolutely insane team. I think in this case, Amen Thompson would play point guard and Devin Booker the two, but I can keep it here for now. I don't really care. They now have a starting lineup of Devin Booker, Amen Thompson. Where's Kevin Durant? Oh, he's listed as a power forward. He'll probably play small forward here. So their starting lineup will be Devin Booker, Amen Thompson, Kevin Durant, Jabari Smith Jr., and Alperen Şengün. And they'll still have guys like Tari Eason, Jalen Johnson, Cam Whitmore, and Reed Shepherd all coming off the bench. This is an absolutely loaded basketball team that's looking to challenge fellow Texas team San Antonio for the West this season, as well as other teams, of course. I think Houston does this because it makes them absolutely stacked. Meanwhile, the Suns, they didn't really have much going for them. Apart from Booker and Durant, nobody else was rated above an 80 on this entire roster. It didn't have their picks. It didn't have anybody really young other than Ryan Dunn on their entire roster. So they needed to make some sort of change, and that's what they do here. Did they get full value necessarily for Devin Booker? I think they could have gotten more picks from another team, but the important part and why Phoenix chose this deal is it gets their own first round picks back, which they desperately wanted. And they also do get a player who has the potential to be the focal point of the next era of Suns basketball. Jalen Green, his highs are very, very high. Hasn't quite been as consistent as I think he has the potential to be, but now he has a team unto himself here in Phoenix until they can draft up more of a young core to surround him with. And then the Magic, they just get a different first round pick. And I think it's a solid move for them. The Wizards are clearly one of the worst teams in basketball, and they just make this pick pretty much to facilitate the Suns trade. But could Orlando be another team that makes a move here? They've been kind of disappointing to start this series out. They could be even looking to flip that Washington pick before it's made, but we'll just have to wait and find out exactly what their plans are with that selection that they just received. We would get an unfortunate injury for one of our stud rookies here. Cameron McKnight expected to miss 1 to 2 months, which probably translates to like 2 weeks in this game for some reason. But his torn right MCL will keep him out for a little bit on this roster. That's gonna bring us to the trade deadline here. Somehow, even with McKnight out, we won 6 out of 7 games here to end January and begin February here right before the deadline. So things are looking a little bit up for us. If we go now to the NBA standings and how they look, there is a really tight race here. If you exclude the Jazz here at 32, basically from 31 all the way to 19 is currently within 2 games of being 20 and 30, which is a very tightly packed bottom of the lottery. There could be a lot of shifts here. As of right now, we have the 5th worst winning percentage in basketball, but I could see us jumping up, especially with this recent win streak. I could see us going down. The Jazz are pretty hard to catch up to at this rate. That Trae Young for Lauri Markkanen trade didn't quite work out for them. They gave us a pick, I believe. We have a Utah pick. It's not for a little while though. We go to our picks. We have the Utah 2027, so it's actually next year. So that's looking like it could be an absolutely awesome pick. That's the year we don't own our own first round pick, but owning the Jazzes might even be better than owning our own next season. So let's go ahead and take a look at the stats and see if we want to make any moves at the trade deadline, which will be next episode. You'll have to let me know what you thought of the first manual trade I've done here for the series. I like to make some manual trades for the CPU teams from time to time, just based on teams who are vastly under or overperforming, and may not have been perfect, but I do think we got ourselves a pretty good deal there. So if we're sorting here by, let's keep at minutes. I like that one there. We have Cameron McKnight, who of course is currently not playing for us, but he's still averaging 22 points a game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, over a stock and a half a game. He's got the turnovers down a little bit, 41% from the field on 19 shots a game, just 35% from 3, which is a little bit lower than I was hoping for. I wasn't expecting him to be an elite marksman year 1. I was hoping for more high 30s. We'll see what happens off the injury from him, but certainly a rookie year that makes you confident for his future. Ayrton Saramago, 24 points, 7 rebounds, 2.5 assists a game. He's averaging 1.5 stocks. His turnovers are down to just over 2. Shooting 46% from the field. Now those field goal attempts have really gotten close between these two. His 3-point percentage is down to normal. I was expecting probably around mid-30s from him, and that's where he's at. 8 attempts a game. He's taking almost the same amount as McKnight, which is kind of insane. Getting to the line 5 times a game. Jalen Duren, 3rd in minutes, no surprise, averaging a double-double still for us. 55% from the field. You love to see it over a stock. One thing you'll notice is these high-minute guys, we're not getting a lot of assists, but our steals and blocks, nobody's elite at any of them, but they're all, you know, averaging more than a half a game in those areas. So we're making some plays defensively. He's taking about 11 shots a game. After that, you have Lonzo, who has been able to avoid injury. That was not something we could say for him last year. He's done a good job avoiding injuries. 12, 4, and 6 with 2 steals a game nearly. Half of a block as well. Like what I'm seeing there. His field goal percentage is up above 40. That is excellent. Takes about 60% of his shots as threes as well. So 40% isn't even that bad. Shooting 39% from 3. So Lonzo Ball looks like he's having a good stretch of the season, and maybe that's impacting our winning. Josh Green, 7.5, 3 and 3 a game for him. Efficiency has dipped slightly, but it was really good before. Still really good now. Max Christie here, 23 minutes a game, averaging 8, 3 and 3. 45% from the field, 35% from 3. Takes about half of his shots as threes. I think that's pretty good production from him in his first full year having a role. I'm excited to see if he can even get better down the line. Isaiah Joe, 9.4 points per game, 2 and 2. He is shooting 39% from 3, and most of his field goals are from 3, which explains his low field goal percentage. But still would love that to at least be in the 40s overall. But 39% from 3 on 7 attempts a game. I'll take that. Don't know if he's a true point guard. I think if we could get him back to playing 2 guard for us in the future, that could be good. Zeke Naji here, 38% from the field, 24% from deep. He's also taking a large percentage of his shot attempts as 3s, but you know, you have to take that into account with the field goal percentage. That was pointed out to me last episode. But when you're shooting 24%, I don't know if I want half of your attempts to be from 3. Leonard Miller here, 40% from the field, 34% from 3. Another guy who takes just under half of his attempts from 3 here, averaging 16 minutes a game, putting up 6.5 points. Not great, not terrible. For a 74 overall though, I think I'll take it. KJ Martin Jr., under 3 points per game. He's very efficient. He just doesn't take shots, which is, it is what it is. I would like to get an improvement. I think this bench in general, we don't have like a guy off the bench. I would love to have that, somebody that we can get excited coming off the bench. That's something that I'd like to get in the draft. I will see if that's going to be possible in this upcoming draft, because, you know, we're not taking somebody with our first pick to come off the bench and then we don't have any picks until the second round. We do have a couple of projected high second round picks. We could maybe package those for a low first round pick, but there you have the updates at the conclusion of this episode. Let me know if you think we should make any moves at the trade deadline. I don't really have any in mind. Last season, I had a couple of guys in mind that I thought I wanted to trade. This year, I just don't think there's as much wiggle room in terms of when we trade a guy away, who are we replacing him with? I mean, the only other guys that we can play on our roster are JT Washington and Ricky Mobley. Those are the only guys that I'm allowed to have in our regular rotation because of our draft only franchise limitations. So if we end up trading somebody, we're giving somebody very bad some minutes this year, which I don't particularly mind. We are towards the bottom of basketball this year, so if we need somebody bad coming off the bench for the final couple of months of the season, I don't think it's gonna be the end of the world per se. But that's all I've got for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, let me know what you think of the trade deadline. Let me know what you think of the top of this draft class. We'll be back with more Vancouver franchise very soon, and I will see you then.